The house at the end of the street had been abandoned for years at least. That's what the neighbors believed. Hidden beneath layers of ivy and decay, it was the kind of place kids dared each other to approach on Halloween night, only to sprint away laughing, never daring to step inside. But what no one knew, what no one even suspected, was that the horror lurking within those rotting walls wasn't just a local ghost story. It was real, and by the time the truth came out, it was already too late. Tonight, we're stepping into the twisted history of one of America's most terrifying real-life crime scenes. This isn't just another haunted house tale. This is a case so disturbing that even the most seasoned detectives struggle to make sense of it. It started, as many horror stories do, with a missing person. A young woman gone without a trace. Her car left parked just a few blocks away. Her phone found in the grass, screen cracked, battery dead. No signs of struggle. No leads. Just a chilling silence that left her family and the entire town grasping for answers. The deeper investigators dug, the more unsettling the clues became. Strange reports of flickering lights in the supposedly empty house. Shadows moving behind shattered windows. A foul, lingering odor that drifted through the autumn air, growing stronger with each passing day. Then came the night when one brave officer decided to step inside. The moment his flashlight beam cut through the darkness, the nightmare began to unfold. What he found would shock an entire nation, turning an overlooked neighborhood into the backdrop for one of the most haunting crime stories in modern history. Blood-stained walls, unfinished meals still sitting on the table, and something else, something that would send shivers down his spine and change everything they thought they knew about the case. What was hiding inside that house? And how had it managed to stay a secret for so long? As we peel back the layers of this chilling mystery, you might find yourself questioning everything you thought you knew about fear. Because sometimes, the scariest stories aren't the ones we tell around campfires. Sometimes, they're the ones that actually happened. The missing woman's name was Emily Carter, a 24-year-old college graduate with a bright future ahead of her. She wasn't the type to vanish without a word. Her friends knew her as dependable, always the one to text back, always the one to make plans weeks in advance. She had a steady job at a local bookstore, a small but close-knit circle of friends, and a boyfriend, Tyler, who had been with her for nearly 3 years. By all accounts, Emily's life was stable, ordinary even. But as investigators began retracing her final steps, they realized that things weren't quite as picture-perfect as they seemed. The last confirmed sighting of Emily was on the evening of October 27th. She had just finished her shift at the bookstore and was seen on security footage locking up at exactly 9:42 p.m. A co-worker remembered her mentioning something about meeting someone later that night, but when asked for details, they shrugged. Emily hadn't said much more than that. The only clue was a single text message she had sent to a friend around 10:15 p.m. It was short, vague, and strangely out of character. "Hey, I think I made a mistake." That was the last message she ever sent. After that, silence. It was faint at first, just a whisper of decay mixed with mold, but as they moved deeper inside, it grew stronger. It wasn't the sharp, unmistakable stench of death, but something rotting, something hidden beneath the surface. And then, just as they reached the basement door, a call came through the radio. Evidence had gone missing. Emily's phone, the one found outside, had been logged into evidence just hours ago. But now, it was gone, vanished from the station without a trace. The team exchanged wary glances. Was this a mistake? A clerical error? Or had someone deliberately removed it, someone who didn't want them getting closer to the truth? The loss of the phone was a devastating blow. It had been their only concrete link between Emily and this house, the only proof that she had been near this place at all. Without it, they were left grasping at shadows. And as the air inside the house thickened with the weight of unanswered questions, something else happened, something that made Detective Holloway realize they weren't just dealing with a missing person. They were dealing with something much worse. A neighbor, an elderly man named Walter Grayson, had been watching from his porch across the street since the moment the team arrived. At first, he had seemed curious, peering out from behind his old screen door, but now he was pacing, his hands wringing together, his expression dark with worry. Finally, he stepped off his porch, shuffled across the street, and stood at the edge of the property, his voice barely more than a whisper. "You need to stop," he said. "You don't want to go looking for things that are meant to stay buried." Holloway narrowed his eyes. "Mr. Grayson, if you know something, now's the time to tell us." But the old man just shook his head. "Some doors," he murmured, glancing toward the house, "ain't meant to be opened." And with that, he turned and walked away. The team stood in stunned silence, the weight of his words pressing down on them. Was this just the rambling of an old man, or was it a warning? And if it was a warning, who or what was he afraid of? Coincidence? Or something far more sinister? Just as Holloway turned to tell his team to dig deeper, his radio crackled to life. The officer stationed outside spoke in a low, tense voice. "Sir, we just found something." The team rushed outside, their boots crunching against the gravel driveway. The officer pointed toward the overgrown backyard, his face pale. "Back there," he said, "near the tree line." Sarah's hands trembled as she rubbed her arms, trying to steady herself. "I don't know what's happening, but I can't shake the feeling that this is bigger than Emily." She took a shaky breath, then met Holloway's gaze. "There's something I didn't tell you before. Something she told me a few weeks ago, right before she started acting different." Holloway leaned in. "Tell me everything." Sarah hesitated, chewing on her lip, then spoke in a hushed tone, as if she feared someone might be listening. "Emily had been seeing someone," she admitted. "Not Tyler. Someone else. I don't know his name, she wouldn't tell me, but she said he wasn't what he seemed. She told me she had found something out about him, something that scared her. I thought maybe she was being paranoid, but then she got quiet about it. She stopped talking about him altogether." Sarah swallowed hard. "I think she was afraid." The words sank like stones in Holloway's gut. This changed everything. Emily's disappearance wasn't just random. It wasn't just a moment of bad luck or being in the wrong place at the wrong time. She had known something dangerous. And now, whoever had wanted to keep her quiet was making sure no one else went looking. Just as Holloway was about to press Sarah for more details, another officer knocked on the door. His face was grim. "We just got a call," he said. "It's about Tyler, Emily's boyfriend, the man who had sworn up and down that he had no idea where she had gone or what she had been doing that night." Holloway stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "What happened?" The officer hesitated, as if struggling to put the right words together. Then he simply said, "He's missing." The room fell into stunned silence. Sarah's breath hitched. "No," she whispered. "No, that's not possible. I just talked to him this morning." Holloway's mind raced. 2 disappearances, both connected to the same woman. First Emily, now Tyler. If someone had taken him, what did that mean? Had he been hiding something all along, and now he was being silenced? Or had he finally gotten too close to the truth? The thought hit him like a hammer. Tyler wasn't the answer. Tyler had been looking for the answer, and now, just like Emily, he had been erased. The walls of the mystery were closing in. The lies, the warnings, the missing evidence, someone was pulling the strings, keeping them just far enough from the truth to leave them guessing. And if they didn't move fast, they weren't just going to lose the case. They were going to lose the next person who got too close. The realization hit Holloway hard. This wasn't just a case anymore. It was a game, and someone was playing him, moving pieces just out of reach, erasing clues before he could grab hold of them. First, Emily. Now, Tyler. And Sarah. She was next. He could see it in the way her hands shook, in the way her eyes darted toward the door, like she expected something or someone to burst through at any second. The text message had rattled her, but the news about Tyler had broken her. She wasn't just afraid for Emily anymore, she was afraid for herself. And maybe, so was he. He walked her out of the station himself, watching as she climbed into her car, gripping the wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. "Go home," he told her. "Lock your doors. If you see anything, call me." Sarah gave him a hesitant nod, but her eyes told him what she wouldn't say out loud. She didn't feel safe, and honestly, neither did he. The drive back to his apartment was quiet. Too quiet. The city was still alive in the distance, the hum of late-night traffic filling the streets, but something felt off. The shadows seemed longer. The streetlights flickered in ways they shouldn't. He found himself checking his rearview mirror more times than necessary, scanning for headlights that lingered too long, for a car that turned when he did. And then he saw it. A black SUV. It was 2 cars behind him, far enough that it could have been coincidence, but Holloway's gut said otherwise. His fingers tightened around the steering wheel, his pulse quickening. Was this the SUV? The one Emily had mentioned? The one she swore had been following her in the days before she vanished? His heart pounded as he turned onto a quieter road near his apartment, watching the SUV carefully. It followed. Every turn he made, it followed. His breath came faster now, his mind racing. Was this just paranoia? Or had someone decided he was asking too many questions? He knew better than to go straight home, so instead, he took a sharp right at the last second, pulling into a gas station parking lot. The SUV passed by slowly, almost too slowly, like whoever was inside wanted him to see them. The windows were tinted black, revealing nothing. And then, just as it had appeared, it was gone, slipping into the night like a ghost. Holloway sat there for a long moment, gripping the wheel so hard his hands ached. Someone was watching him. Someone knew he was getting too close. And worse, they wanted him to know it. By the time he finally made it to his apartment, exhaustion dragged at him, but sleep was the last thing on his mind. He locked the door behind him, double-checking the deadbolt. Then the chain. Then the windows. He had faced killers before, had spent years tracking down the worst humanity had to offer. But this was different. This wasn't a criminal who had made a mistake. This was someone in control. Someone who had been 10 steps ahead since the beginning. He dropped into the chair at his desk, rubbing his hands over his face. His laptop sat open in front of him, the case files still pulled up, as if the answers were hiding somewhere between the lines. His gaze flicked back to the police report on the first disappearance, the family that had lived in that house before it was abandoned, the ones who had simply vanished in 1998. A father, a mother, a teenage daughter, no bodies, no leads, no explanation. Just like Emily. A chill ran down his spine. What if this wasn't just about Emily? What if it was bigger? Older? What if it had been happening for decades? And then his phone rang. The sound cut through the silence like a knife, sharp and jarring. Holloway hesitated before answering. "Holloway," he said, his voice rough, cautious. Silence. And then breathing. Slow. Deliberate. The kind that made his skin crawl. His grip tightened around the phone. "Who is this?" he demanded. More silence. Then, a voice low, distorted, almost unrecognizable. But the words sent ice through his veins. "You should have stopped looking." The line went dead. Holloway's hands trembled as he lowered the phone. His mouth was dry, his heart hammering against his ribs. This wasn't just intimidation. This wasn't just a warning. It was a promise. Holloway sat frozen, the dead phone still clutched in his hand. His mind raced, sifting through every detail of the case, every missing piece, every loose end that refused to tie itself together. He had known he was getting close, but close to what? The warning wasn't just a threat, it was a reminder that someone had been watching him, orchestrating this from the very beginning. But what if he had been looking at it all wrong? What if Emily's disappearance wasn't random, but intentional? Not an accident, not a crime of opportunity, but something carefully planned. Something rehearsed. His eyes flicked back to the case files on his laptop, the articles on the vanished family from 1998. No forced entry, no signs of struggle, no bodies ever found. It wasn't just similar to Emily's case, it was identical. A perfect replica, 26 years apart. Someone had repeated the exact same crime, down to the smallest details. But why? And more importantly, how had no one seen the connection before? Then, a thought struck him so hard it felt like a physical blow. What if someone had seen it before? His pulse pounded as he reached for his phone, scrolling through his recent calls, until he found the number he needed. Walter Grayson, the old man who had stood on the edge of the property and told him to stop digging. The man who had spoken as if he knew exactly what was buried in that house. Holloway had dismissed him at the time, written him off as just another superstitious neighbor. But what if Walter hadn't been warning him to leave? What if he had been trying to tell him something? Holloway gritted his teeth. I can't do that. I need to know what you're not telling me. Another pause. Then, quieter this time, it's not what you think. A chill ran down Holloway's spine. Then tell me what it is. Walter exhaled, the sound brittle, like he was holding something in. Meet me at the old gas station off Highway 6. You come alone, or you don't come at all. The line went dead. Holloway was already grabbing his keys. The drive out to the gas station was suffocating, the road stretching endlessly ahead, the shadows outside pressing in closer than they should. The place had been abandoned for years, the rusted pumps standing like skeletons under the dim glow of a flickering street lamp. Walter was already there, leaning against an old truck, a cigarette burning between his fingers. His face was drawn, his eyes hollow with something that looked like guilt. Holloway stepped out of his car, keeping his voice low. Talk. Walter took a long drag before finally speaking. You're looking for Emily, right? Holloway's jaw tightened. You know where she is? Walter hesitated. Then finally, he looked Holloway in the eye. She's not missing, he said quietly. She never was. The words didn't make sense at first. They hung in the air, heavy and disorienting, as Holloway tried to force them into a reality that refused to accept them. Not missing? How the hell could that be possible? Emily had been gone for days. She had left behind evidence, a trail of breadcrumbs leading straight to that cursed house. Holloway's breath came faster. What the hell are you talking about? Walter flicked the cigarette to the ground, crushing it beneath his boot. This whole thing, he said. The phone, the necklace, the SUV, the warnings, it's not what you think. It's a setup, a story playing out the way it's supposed to. He exhaled sharply, running a hand through his graying hair. Emily didn't just disappear, detective. She chose to vanish. Holloway's stomach lurched. That's impossible. Why would she? But then he saw it. The way Walter's hands fidgeted, the way his eyes darted toward the dark road, like he was expecting someone or something to be watching. Like he had seen this before. And suddenly, the pieces started to fit in a way that made his blood run cold. The missing family from 1998. Emily's disappearance. Tyler's sudden vanishing. It was the same case, over and over. A cycle, a pattern, a ritual. And Emily knew. She had known before she disappeared. Had she chosen to follow in their footsteps? Had she orchestrated everything, the phone, the necklace, the SUV, because she wanted Holloway to look? Because she wanted him to find something? Or worse, because she didn't want to be found? Walter swallowed hard, his voice barely more than a whisper. She's not the first. He looked Holloway dead in the eye. And she won't be the last. The air turned suffocating, because for the first time since this started, Holloway realized the truth. Emily wasn't the victim. She was part of the story. And the story wasn't finished yet. Holloway felt the weight of Walter's words settle deep in his chest, an unbearable pressure that made it hard to breathe. His mind screamed for logic, for facts, for something tangible to grasp onto, but nothing made sense anymore. If Emily wasn't missing, if she had vanished on purpose, then everything he thought he knew about this case had been a lie. Not a mistake, not a misinterpretation, a deliberate deception. But why? Why would she go through all this trouble? Why the eerie clues, the staged crime scene, the warnings that felt too real to be fake? And if she had chosen to disappear, why did someone still want him to stop looking? His phone buzzed, jolting him out of his thoughts. A text. Unknown number, walk away, Holloway, or you won't make it out either. A slow dread crawled through him. This wasn't a vague warning anymore. It was personal. Someone out there knew exactly what he was uncovering. Someone who wanted to make damn sure he never put the last pieces together. He turned back to Walter, his voice low and sharp. Tell me everything. Right now. Walter gave a bitter laugh, but there was no humor in it. You think I know? All I know is that once the story starts, it has to finish. His voice dropped to almost a whisper. And the ones who try to rewrite it, they don't get to tell another. A gust of wind swept through the gas station lot, rattling the rusted signs, making the night feel impossibly vast and empty. Holloway wanted to believe Walter was just another paranoid old man, another local swallowed by ghost stories and superstition. But the fear in his voice was real. And if he was right, if Emily had vanished, not out of fear but by choice, then she had to have a reason. A damn good one. And if someone was threatening Holloway to stay out of it, that meant he was closer to finding the truth than ever before. His grip tightened around his phone, the text message burning into his mind. Walk away, or you won't make it out either. He could leave now. Drop the case. Let the story play out the way it always had. That's what they wanted. That's what Emily had wanted. But then what? Wait for the next girl to disappear. Wait for another house to whisper its secrets, for another name to be swallowed into nothing? No, that wasn't who he was. He couldn't walk away. He wouldn't. But if he was going to do this, he needed backup. Sarah. She was the only one who had been with him from the start, the only one who had felt the fear as deeply as he had. He didn't know if he could trust her, not completely. But she was the last connection to Emily he had left. If there were answers, they started with her. He climbed back into his car and sped toward her apartment, his mind racing through everything she had told him. The strange calls, the unease that had followed Emily for weeks before she disappeared, the way Sarah had seemed afraid before she even had a reason to be. What if she had known more than she let on? What if, deep down, she had always known Emily wasn't really missing? When he pulled up outside her building, something felt off. The street was too quiet, too still. He stepped out of the car slowly, scanning the dimly lit parking lot. No movement, no sound, except the distant hum of the freeway. But as he reached her door, he saw it a smear of red on the doorknob. Blood. His breath caught in his throat. He knocked. No answer. His pulse thundered in his ears as he tried the handle. The door swung open. The apartment was dark, but the air inside was heavy, thick with something he couldn't quite place. A shape loomed in the shadows near the couch, slumped and unmoving. Sarah? His voice was barely a whisper. And then she moved. Not slumped, not unconscious. Hiding. Her breath hitched as she turned toward him, eyes wide and glistening. She wasn't just scared. She was shaking. Holloway, she rasped. You shouldn't be here. His stomach twisted. What happened? She swallowed hard, glancing toward the back of the apartment, toward the window that stood just slightly ajar. "They were here," she whispered. "Looking for you." His heart stopped. She wasn't the next target. He was. Holloway felt the air in the apartment press against his skin like something alive, something watching. Sarah's words rattled through his skull. "They were here, looking for you." He had been so focused on Emily, on her disappearance, on the warnings that surrounded it, that he hadn't once considered the possibility that the noose tightening around him wasn't just a warning. It was a trap. His pulse roared in his ears as he scanned the room, searching for anything out of place. The back window opened just enough to let the night slip in, the faint scent of something metallic in the air. And Sarah, pale, shaking, eyes darting to the shadows like she was afraid to even speak. "Who?" His voice was low, urgent. "Who was here?" She shook her head. "I don't know. They didn't show their faces. Just knocked once. I didn't answer, but I saw the shadow outside the peephole. They slipped something under the door, then left. But I think they came back. I heard something near the window." And then she swallowed, her breath hitching. The blood on the doorknob. It wasn't mine. Holloway's stomach twisted. He crossed the room in 2 quick steps, yanking open the door. The hallway was empty, but when he glanced down, a small envelope lay just outside the threshold, its edges smeared with something dark. He crouched, fingers hesitating just above it. The blood was fresh. Whoever had left it, someone had bled for it. And standing in front of it was a group of people. 7 of them. Men and women dressed in dark clothing, standing shoulder to shoulder. Their faces blurred, as if the image had been altered. All except one. Emily. Holloway's breath caught in his throat. She looked younger, maybe 18 or 19, but it was her. No doubt. And she wasn't afraid. She wasn't being held against her will. She was smiling. Sarah's sharp intake of breath told him she had seen it too. "No," she murmured. "That's not possible." But it was. And suddenly, everything, the disappearances, the warnings, the repeated cycles, snapped into horrifying clarity. Emily hadn't vanished. Emily had been part of this from the start. Holloway felt his pulse thunder as a sickening realization crashed over him like a wave. The missing family in 1998. The eerily identical crime scene. The repeated patterns. It wasn't just a story repeating itself, it was being orchestrated. Deliberately. He turned to Sarah, gripping the photo so tightly his knuckles ached. "How long have you known?" Her eyes widened. "What? How long, Sarah?" His voice was sharp, cutting through the tension like a knife. "Because you knew something wasn't right before she even went missing. You knew she was scared. You knew she was acting strange. And now this?" He shook the photo in front of her. "This isn't a mistake. This isn't some coincidence. Emily was part of it. And if you knew—" "I didn't know," she snapped, but there was something fragile in her voice, something just shy of breaking. "I suspected, but I didn't want to believe it." Holloway's breath came fast, his heart hammering. "Then start talking. Now." Sarah swallowed hard, wrapping her arms around herself like she was trying to hold something in. "I knew Emily was involved with something weird," she admitted. "She never told me what, but she would disappear for hours, sometimes days. She said she was helping people. She was obsessed with the house, said it wasn't just a place, but something more, like it had rules that had to be followed. She started talking about cycles, about things needing to be done a certain way, at a certain time. I thought she was losing it. I begged her to stop. But she just kept saying that it was bigger than both of us, that she was part of something that couldn't be undone." Holloway felt the cold sink into his bones. She was part of something that couldn't be undone. The cycles, the missing people, the house, always at the center of it all. Emily wasn't a victim. She had been a recruit. And now, the same people who had taken her had their sights set on him. Sarah's voice wavered. "Holloway, if they came here for you, it means you're too close." Her eyes met his, filled with something that looked terrifyingly like pity. "You're not just investigating them anymore. You're part of the cycle now." His grip tightened on the photograph as the truth settled over him like a death sentence. He had thought he was chasing the story, but the story had been chasing him all along. The house loomed before Holloway like an open grave, dark and waiting, its broken windows gaping wide, as if it had been expecting him all along. The photograph in his pocket felt like it was burning against his skin, a reminder that Emily hadn't been taken. She had chosen this, chosen them. And now, standing in front of the place that had swallowed so many before her, Holloway realized there was no turning back. He wasn't here to search anymore. He was here to end it. The air was thick with the scent of damp wood and something older, something rotting just beneath the surface. He pushed through the door, the warped wood groaning beneath his weight. Inside, the house felt alive, its silence pressing in on him from all sides. He moved carefully, his flashlight sweeping over the peeling wallpaper, the water-stained ceiling, the floorboards that creaked like they were whispering secrets. Then, a sound soft but deliberate. Footsteps. He froze, breath caught in his throat. The darkness stretched ahead, swallowing the end of the hallway in shadows, but he wasn't alone anymore. A voice low, calm, and far too familiar. "You should have left when you had the chance." Emily. She stepped into the dim light, her face unreadable, her hands at her sides, as if she wasn't standing in the center of a nightmare, as if none of this had been a lie. She wasn't scared. Emily tilted her head slightly, like she was disappointed he hadn't figured it out already. "Because it was always supposed to be you." A slow, cold dread seeped into his bones. "What the hell are you talking about?" She exhaled, stepping closer. "This place, it doesn't just take people. It chooses them. It's been watching, waiting. Every few decades, the cycle resets. A new story begins. Someone disappears, someone searches, someone gets too close. And when they do..." She paused, studying his face. "The house decides who stays, and who becomes part of the story." Holloway shook his head. "That's insane." Emily smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Is it?" She gestured toward the walls, toward the old photographs lining the hallway. He hadn't noticed them before, but now they stood out like a series of graves. Faded faces stared back at him, groups of people standing in front of the house, just like the picture he had found. The clothing changed, the faces were different, but the pattern remained the same. The house had always been feeding, and every time, someone new was pulled into its orbit. His pulse thundered. "No, you don't get to stand there and act like you didn't have a choice." His voice was sharp now, filled with something hot, something close to anger. "You let people believe you were a victim. You let me believe." His words caught in his throat. "You led me here. On purpose." Emily's expression didn't change. "I had to." Behind her, the shadows shifted. Movement. The house was gone. Not in the literal sense, it still stood there, an empty husk at the end of that forgotten road, the same as it had for decades. But something inside it had shifted, like the pulse of whatever lived within its walls had slowed, as if it had fed enough for now. Holloway stood at the tree line, his breath ragged, his body aching from the struggle to escape. The night was quiet, too quiet. Not a single trace of movement. No wind. No distant hum of insects. Just a silence so deep, it pressed against his ears like a weight. Sarah was safe. He had made sure of that. She hadn't understood at first, hadn't believed him when he told her to leave, to run before it was too late. But when she saw them, when she felt the pull of the house, the way he had, she had finally listened. And now, standing here alone, Holloway knew that he had made the only choice he could. The only choice that would stop the cycle from repeating, at least for now. Emily had wanted him to stay. Wanted him to become part of it. And for a moment, just a brief, horrifying moment, he had almost given in. Because what if she was right? What if leaving meant the house would only find someone else, someone innocent, someone who didn't see it coming? Maybe if he stayed, if he gave himself to it, it would stop. But then he had seen the faces. Not just Emily's, but all the others before her. The ones who had stood in front of the house, smiling, watching. And he had understood. It never stopped. It never would. Not unless someone refused to play the game. So, he had done the only thing that made sense. He had burned it. It wasn't fire in the traditional sense. He doubted the house could be destroyed so easily. But he had set it ablaze with truth, with the one thing it couldn't survive. He had found the old records, the hidden documents, buried beneath floorboards and within walls, proof of the people who had gone missing over the years, the ones who had been written out of history, their names erased. He had dragged those secrets into the light, exposed them to the world, made sure they couldn't be ignored. He had shattered the illusion, torn apart the carefully constructed lie. And the house had screamed. Not a sound, not something he could hear, but something he felt deep in his chest, in his bones. The anger, the hunger, the realization that its game had been interrupted. He had run, forcing himself to ignore the voices, the whispers that tried to drag him back, tried to convince him to stay, to belong. And now, standing here, staring at the place where it all began, he wondered if he had truly escaped at all, because the house was still there. It would always be there, waiting, watching. But this time, it had lost. For now, Holloway exhaled, the weight of it all pressing down on him. He should have felt relief. He had survived, hadn't he? He had broken the cycle, at least in the way it had played out before. But deep down, he knew the truth. The story wasn't over. It never would be. Because somewhere, someone was already listening. And when that day came, the house would be ready.